Hi there, my name is Toby, known as Toby Sketch Loose, and I'm an artist and an art teacher. In this series of lessons, we're going to learn to draw, to sketch anything. And I know that sounds ambitious, maybe even ridiculous, but I really want to show you it's a lot more simple than it sounds. In the first couple of lessons, we'll look at basic concepts, which will give you a huge amount of confidence. And it will let you fill up your pages with doodles. And then we will be taking these simple concepts and using them straight away, diving in, drawing everything from animals and people to important parts of nature, landscape scenery and urban scenes. I will show you my ways of doing things, doing it loose, having a lot of fun. We'll make mistakes, and that's great because we learn from mistakes. The big key here to understand, the thing which no one really tells you, is that art isn't that hard. The idea of creating something which looks effective and interesting and is fun to create is really not that challenging if you just let yourself enjoy the process and have a bit of fun with it. From these simple building blocks, this is the start of your journey, and taking these ideas, taking these simple steps will let you keep building, keep learning, and take your art in whatever direction you want. The fundamentals of drawing are the key steps to creating an oil painting, to creating loose urban sketches and having fun with friends drawing outside, or even creating portraits and pet portraits. It all starts with the ideas in this class. So without further ado, let's sort of dive in and get started. The first thing that we might want to have a think about is, what do you need to draw with? Silly question. But not a silly question, because there is loads and loads of stuff out there and it can be a little bit overwhelming. All that I'm going to use today in terms of my surface, my paper, is a cheap notepad, is a cheap bit of sketching paper. I actually bought this notepad from one of the budget art retailers found on the high street in the UK everywhere. And that's all we need. I do have lots of fancy papers on the things behind me on these shelves, but to doodle, to draw, to sketch, to practice my ideas, it's totally unnecessary to get more expensive things out. You can if you want, and they produce different effects and they could be quite fun, but basic paper is all you need. Next, we consider our pen. Now, I'll be using a fountain pen for the duration of these lessons. That's because I really love the feel and the flow of a fountain pen. Fountain pens are great for the flexibility of line because they can do a lot of things, from really fine lines to really bold lines, and they have a lot of character. And that's something we'll have a little look at in the next lesson, how to create interesting and characterful lines. But they're also messy, expensive, we have to fill them with ink. So they're not something you need to go out and buy straight away. Another option that artists love using are fine liners. These are much cheaper. They produce really lovely controlled lines. To get varied lines, we'll need a couple of different sizes of fine liner. And the exact size will be, not important, except to you it will be a personal choice. For me, I love using something like a 0.2mm fine liner as my thinner one and a 0.5mm fine liner as a bolder one. Other people feel much different. The biggest disadvantage to these is that they are plastic, which we throw away. You can't really refill them. So they're not brilliant for the environment. Next, we have a whole range of other different tips, essentially. So these are things like Fude pens or brush pens. These are amazing for creating dramatic lines from very thin to really bold. They are a huge range of fairly technical pens. They take a little bit of getting used to. They're amazing if you want to start using them now, and that could come in the form of a fountain pen with a Fude nib, could come in the form of a sort of throwaway plastic pen with either a Fude nib, a brush nib, or a range of other things. They are a little more difficult to use, so I wouldn't recommend starting with them unless you have a passion for learning them, and then I'm sure that you'll be able to. Of course, there are loads of other things. The really obvious one is graphite pencils. That could be a mechanical pencil or a classic sharpener in a sharpener pencil made of wood. These are fantastic. They produce a more subtle line. They are amazing for shading. They produce slightly different effects. The advantage is you can, of course, rub them out and correct your line. Now I'm going to show you through these next few lessons that might also be a disadvantage. The fact that we can rub it out often means we end up getting stuck in perfectionism, and we never learn to just deal with mistakes and accept that actually a lot of mistakes add character and fun. So maybe a pencil's a good idea if that's something that you'd prefer to use, but maybe it's not the best idea if actually you want to accelerate your learning. There are other pens as well which are absolutely fine, things like biro pens or ballpoint pens. They're the kind of office pen standard. They're great. If that's what you've got, you can do everything in these lessons with those. They're not a classic art pen, but that doesn't mean artists don't use them, and it doesn't mean you cannot develop your drawing with them. And like that, that is the equipment that I suggest we try out. If you have a few different things to consider, then the first thing, before you jump into the next lesson, the first thing I suggest you do is do some scribbling. Do some really simple shapes, some simple people, even stick men and funny little houses, just to try out the pens and see what feels most comfortable in your hand. You might then have a great idea of what you're going to use. You might not, and that's great. That means in the next few lessons, you can chop and change, experiment with one or the other, and see how things go.